Hello, this is Suzanne in Ohio. I have a couple things to share with you today. And what I have laying out here is some greeting cards that I made out of some of my own images. And I kind of want to show you how I arrived at that because I feel like I really went down a rabbit hole, which ended up to be really good. But at first, I'll show you what we're talking about here. I made these little sets of greeting cards with my own images. And so this is all fabric art and slow stitching, embroidery, whatever you want to call it, and three-dimensional elements on it. So there's 4 in this set. This set is the birds, and I have another set to show you. But of course, that is a chickadee and a goldfinch and bluebird and a Carolina wren. So I ended up making greeting cards out of these images, but here's where I first started. Well, let me show you the inside of the card too. Now, because I didn't have anything pre-planned, my images were different ratios and proportions, so I added a little bit of paper embellishment here to kind of equal out this image compared to this one. So I just put them on plain cardstock. That's what I have right now. Of course, I'm not going to the store during this time to get anything else. And so everything is not maybe as perfect as I would have chosen, but it still turned out really nice. I just did some rubber stamping, and also I put some rubber stamping and a tiny bit of shading on the envelopes that go with this set. So again, I'll say this is a total fabric image. Even the bird, I started playing around again, painting on fabric with my Inktense pencils, and this is what I came up with. Now, this was my first thought, and when I started this one, I had no idea where I was going to go with it. If you see this teacup in the background, you can almost see the wrinkles in the fabric. That was a fabric applique that I had made 3 or 4 years ago, and I printed off the image, and I've used it many times for different projects in my journals and things. So let me show you what the original image. Now, this is a copy of the original applique, and I have not cut the hole out for the handle or anything, but it was just oversized teacup and saucer. And during this time of staying home, I thought, well, what can I work on without digging out and starting a whole new project? So I saw this laying around, and I thought I should do something with that applique. So that's where the idea came from. I thought, well, it'd look cute with a bird on it. And then, of course, you have to have some flowers or something laying on the saucer. So that's what I ended up with. So let me show you how that original fabric art piece looks. Got it right here. And you'll be able to see just how big this thing is. It was very oversized. So tried to make the other elements ratio, but I'm not sure they really are or not. But anyways, here's the fabric bird. I painted him on just plain muslin and then cut him out, and it's needle turn applique. And then all these little flower elements, I just tried to mimic. You know, these could be forget-me-nots, I don't know what they are, but pussy willows And I put some yellow in there because of the yellow up here in the roses. I'd like to repeat the colors, but that could be forsythia with a stretch of the imagination. And then some little viney twinies. You always have to have something airy and ethereal, I think. So that was my first image, and I enjoyed it so much, I thought, oh, I think I'll try another bird. So that's what I did. And here's the second one I came up with, this little goldfinch, and this sitting on the thistle, because I just didn't want to have to try to manipulate feet or anything like that. It's just too tedious. So in order to repeat the colors, I had a corner off of an old handkerchief. I've said before in other videos, my sister made a quilt top completely with handkerchiefs, and she gave me all her scraps. So wow, didn't that turn out just perfect? Because thistles are that color, and I had the embroidery thread. So that's what I did. It's got all kind of textile elements on here. A little piece of, I don't even know if you can see it or not. Yeah, music. I printed it on in reverse on one of those iron-on transfer things because that's what I have. And I put that in the background. Another scrap of a handkerchief right there, and I just added some color up in here and down through here with my Inktense pencils so that I could keep the color theme going. Part of an old doily, and then this fine delicate embroidery on top here is a piece of wedding tulle that had some embellishment on it, and that's what I use. So I love the fabric stitching. I love the slow stitching. I love applique. I don't think there's a part of it I don't like. So I ended up with this. So then I kept going, and what I ended up with was actually 4 birds total. And this one's larger, so let me back out just a little bit. And I did a Carolina wren, and then the background here was something I had printed on fabric years ago, and I used it as a tea towel in my kitchen. And of course, it's no longer needed, so I just simply tore it all apart and saved the part of the image that I could use, and I made that my background. And then just a cluster of torn dyed laces and twirlies, and this cluster of messy looking textile here, which replicates a nest. So that's my Carolina wren, and again I painted him on muslin with Inktense pencils, cut him out, needle turn appliqued him, and there he is. She is, I guess I should say. Same thing with the bluebird. I love this print of this old sheet music, so I printed it on fabric. And if you've never run any fabric through your printer, it's easy to do. So let me say something about that before I go on with this. When I printed this music off back here on this one, I used one of those pre-bought print sheets and then you iron the image on, because I didn't have any of the direct print fabric, so I used this one. Well, once I ironed that on, that was extremely hard to stitch through because it does have some kind of a layer of something on it. So I didn't want that anymore, and I wanted something a little softer. So I just put my muslin on freezer paper and ran it right through my printer. And I did it with a little bit on my printer. I need to ask it for a little bit more contrast to make sure I get what I want. So I printed off that piece of old sheet music, and it's just on fabric, muslin, and then that's my background. And the bluebird and a corner of one of those handkerchiefs. And then this is fabric rose that I just made. And then some dyed lace that I've done a lot of dyed lace. If you've seen any of my other videos, I refer to it a lot. For instance, a lot of these pieces of gold and green down here are some lace that I've dyed myself. Now I've used two different methods to dye lace. I have a polymer paint dip method that I use. It is so simple. It is just simply acrylic paint in a water bath, and you dip everything in it and then hang it out to dry. That works fine. I also did another whole series of lace where I made my own alcohol inks with magic markers, and there's lots of videos on YouTube how to do that, and those, I just love how those came out because I can put more than one color on it and they just blend together absolutely perfect. Well, enough of that. So here's my original slow stitch pieces, and I haven't finished the backs of them yet. You can see they're just plain. I will put some kind of backing on here, but in case you're interested, it's just a solid piece of muslin there, and then a piece of real thin Pellon on there just for stabilization. I love to work with that thin Pellon because it doesn't skew from, you know, out of square, and then because you're really manhandling things a lot when you're doing applique, and if you're not careful, everything can scooch. So these are my original fabric pieces, and then I printed them off and made the greeting cards. Now, when I wasn't moving along too fast to remember, I also put the image, the bird, before I cut him out, I put him under the scanner and I scanned him off. And here he is on his background, which I wasn't careful at all. I got it all kind of messy, you know, because I knew I was going to cut him out and turn it off, turn him under, so it didn't matter. Next time I think I'll give that some different thought. But anyways, here he is printed, and then in a little larger size, you can see how he looks. Now I went ahead and copied and printed him off because I can also use him in paper arts. So I love the idea of using your images in more than one way. So let me move this out of the way and I'll show you just some ideas what you could possibly do. So I just grabbed a few things, and here's a copy of a Western Union telegram. This is free online. I forget where I got it. And I thought, well, I can make a collage with that and start layering things on here. And I have this print. This is a print of my fabric appliques of leaves, ivy leaves. So I could use that, and then I could put him on the foreground. And then I thought, let me show you. Now these are just quick, simple ideas. You can embellish any way you want. He would look good, this ivy would look good on one of those master boards where you have your collage already in the background. But if you're not doing that, then you could put him on here. And little pieces of snippet rolls or whatever you have on there. You could really use him in many different ways. Here's another idea. I have just an image from my scanner of hydrangeas. Now, I copied this on, I believe it was cardstock, and then I saturated it with wax. So it does have a slight see-through quality to it, and you can even see, the lines right through there, the Western Union. So I had a reason when I first did this, but I didn't end up using them all. So you could just use, well, let's see, you could use that as a background, and I have a smaller one. What did I do with my smaller one? Well, I thought I had a smaller one that was already cut. Oh, I do. Here. So I could just begin to create a little collage with him and something like this as the background. So there's so many uses. And what I try to do when I print something out is I completely fill up my sheet. I love to use presentation paper. It gives me a very good print. And I don't want to waste my paper. So even if I have 1 square inch that doesn't have an image on it, I shrink it down and squeeze it in there. So when I cut it out, I can use it almost like a little postage stamp or something. So here's what the wren look like. Now you can tell I flipped the image because the original one was facing the other direction. But I haven't put any alcohol, or I'm sorry, distress ink around the edges, so it's kind of light around the edges. He would really pop out if I put some distress ink around the outside edges, and then I can use him anywhere I want. So that's one idea. And here's what he looks like. Going the right way. She. I keep saying he, but it's a she. Before it's cut out, so she could be part of a tag or whatever you'd want to use it for. And just so you see the comparison, what you can do. There's the original that's not glued on the front of a card, and it could be any size you want. So many ways to use your artwork. Now I brought these out just as a sample to show you. These were images that I made. 2 different teacups, very different because this is like a mid-century modern. And I used my images of the appliques and I positioned them just so, and then made this teacup. So I have used that cut out in many journals, and you can even have things sticking out the top of it or whatever you want. Now this one, the original one, was paper, just made out of paper. And then this one, the original, was made out of paper also, but I used the image of some original embroidered doilies or dresser scarves, whatever you want to call it. So I can't turn around and make another image like this because the original was paper and not fabric. But just ideas of how to use your artwork in many different ways. And then here's a little packet of all my extras. Like I said, when I'm printing off, I fill up my paper, and then I have all kinds of images to use. These are card size. If I want to make another set of cards, I've got it ready. But you can see the bag is full of all different sizes, down to real teeny tiny. And I can stick those anywhere I want in a journal or use them in another collage work piece. Okay, so that idea, let's scoot up all this stuff. That idea turned out well. Don't you love it? Because sometimes, I'm telling you, I start an idea and it just comes to a dead end. And I'm either not crazy about it, or it was, like Rachel says over on Roxy Creation, she says, just too difficult. So she puts things aside. But for those of you that might be interested in how to start one of these, I'll bring that one back over here. It's very simple. So just so you get a little insight into my process, I had another bird here that I haven't done anything with yet. And I was thinking possibly about following this one through. So I'm going to put him over there, and then you can see how I start. So just a plain piece of white fabric. I think this is a high quality white muslin here, but anything that's white. I've got white linen, I've got white sheeting, I've got white shirting material. And then here's a scrap of one of those handkerchiefs that have been already cut up and torn apart. And I kind of like that for the background. And I can sit him right here on this flower and add some embroidery on top of him, on top of this flower, so that it appears like his feet are hidden. So the image painted right on the fabric, and then I would finger press or iron press the edges under, and then start slow stitching, appliquing him on. And then first I'll decide if I want anything coming up behind him, because I want to be sure and get that in place. I may use a piece of this wetting tool because it's so see-through and yet it has those delicate little flowers on it. And that would look nice because, you know, it's all about the layers. It intrigues the mind when you have to look into the image. And so the more layers you have, the more interesting it is, I think, to my mind. And it gives it depth. And so that would be my next project, which I may or may not work on today. I don't know. I've had it sitting around looking at it for a while. But just so you can see here, here's my basket. I've got several of these just full of nothing but teeny tiny little scraps. And I throw nothing away. If it's if it's the size of a postage stamp or bigger, I save it because it all comes in useful to me because of the type of work I do. So, like, here's a little piece of an embroidered. This was a shower curtain, I believe, and that would make a wonderful addition. Sometimes I snip it out, sometimes I leave it as is. Depends on what I feel like. Here's a piece of an applique that I think this came off of a skirt or a blouse or something that I found at the thrift store. And because of the way it is, I might add that, something, just another layer. So enough of that. That's what that's how I arrived at this bird set. Now, because I had some, what I think was success with that, I went on to the next idea. So I ended up with, I thought, wow, I better keep going on this roll. So I came up with another set of cards, and let me see if I can bring you down just, nope, you're down as close as you'll go. So I'll show you the cards, and there's 4 different designs in this set also, and these are all Seashore based, very vintage. Now I'm sure many of you have seen these images online. They are in public domain, and they all have a soft watercolor look to them, all in pinks and teals and things like that. So that's the images I went with. I found the ones I wanted and I printed them on fabric, doing the same thing, ironing them to freezer paper and running them through my printer. So I decided to make the seashells my appliques and then embellish as if it's underwater scene. Now on the back, I printed real soft, real muted, a jelly print that I had made. And this was underwater seaweed, and it was in teals, so it worked out just fine. I left the inside of this card blank because I really didn't feel like I had the right stamps or anything to add to it, and I wasn't going to the store to buy anything. So I just bordered this one off with some plain paper. I had a lot of this colored paper, real thin, and tore it with my tear ruler and distressed the edges a little bit, and voila, there you have that set. Now let me show you the original. Let me see where I put them. I've got the originals, the fabric pieces right here. And here's the first one, or one of them. And you can see the image printed off quite nice, and it just blends right into the background. Now on all four of these, I definitely used those cut off handkerchief corners. But some of them have, like this has beautiful little tiny, tiny, delicate crochet on it. And then I painted separately on other fabric. I painted the seashell items, you know, the sea urchin and these things, and then cut them out and needle turned, appliqued them on here. And this is what I mean by making sure you don't want something coming out from the back of it, because you want to get that in place before you start stitching that down. And in this case, I wanted this teal colored tulle to be in between these elements. It just kind of gives it some depth and dimension. Now everything's not stitched down totally, absolutely tight. There's no need for it. Then it loses, and I have a hard enough time keeping things loose, but it loses some of its looseness if you stitch everything down too tight. So there's one of the pieces, and then here's another one. Get back just a little bit. I hope I've been in frame. I don't know. So I tried to put 3 major elements of seashells on each one. And of course the placement is entirely different on each one of them. So there's 3 seashells here. And then because that image was just a little sparse, I thought I found the same image from the same artist that goes along with that. It's just a little lighthouse. So that's what I put there. And this one. And then I tried to make the placement on each one different. Like the image on this one scooted down to the corner, some up here, some there, some in the middle. And then you fill in around the edge to your liking. So here's my 3 seashells here, or sea items. And then all of this loose, sprawly textiles, which really replicates or give the impression of seaweed and things like that. Again, here's this handkerchief edge, and that has some of the most delicate, I think it's tatting. I'm not sure, but I never know how to tell tatting from very, very tiny crochet. But anyways, that's used on that one. And then this one, this little handkerchief was, or maybe it was the corner of a tiny little scarf or placemat, I don't know, but it was a Battenberg type thing, and it worked well. And then here's my 3 elements here. And because this image had these dark grungy browns in it, I had some gauze, and I just stained it up with some distress ink, or maybe it was my alcohol inks, I don't remember, and then scrunched it up there. So it gives you that impression of dirty, ugly seaweed after it washes up on the shore. So 2 sets of greeting cards, and I have done a third, but it kind of doesn't fit in this video, so I won't show you that one right now. But I want to say, again, use your images in more than one way. And darn if I didn't forget, totally forgot, to copy off my images of my seashells before I stitched them on. Now, if I would have done that, I would have had paper copies that I could have cut out and then used perhaps in a journal or some other piece, tags, cards, pockets, whatever. But I forgot, so I'm going to try to remember to do that. As a matter of fact, I've got to throw him down on the scanner and scan him so that I can print him off on paper, and then I can add that image to use. Now I've got to do that before I stitch him down. So that's my greeting card project. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it gave you some ideas. And again, my encouragement is, once you've created something, if it's all your image or if it's from public domain, don't forget to scan it off and copy it so that you can use it in several different ways. Well, I appreciate you watching, and thank you for all the people out there on YouTube who inspire me. And come back again. I'll be making several more videos today because, as you know, we're all locked in, and it's a good time to do it. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.